Well, not much to add, only that we're witnessing the collapse of those two World Trade Center towers that were hit this morning, and huge amounts of smoke and debris billowing out from the bottom of those buildings, spreading down the streets 2 or 3 blocks around that area. So a whole area, several hundred meters in circumference, has now been affected by this explosion. And one can only imagine the scenes at the bottom there when this happened, as the emergency services were trying to evacuate those buildings.
A job made extremely difficult by the sheer amount of smoke.
Yes, and we should also mention the time that this attack took place. This was one of the busiest times of the morning, rush hour, as people were going to work in one of the most heavily populated areas, cities in America. So the problems that those emergency services are facing are just huge.
We're just looking at a lone helicopter battling against the clouds above the World Trade Center. The emergency services must be extremely stretched.
Yes, I think visibility down there is just one of the many problems. Also the concern that maybe the second tower could go tumbling down. These two of the tallest buildings in the world, when they fall, the amount of bricks and mortar and glass and debris cascading down in a very, very densely populated area is bound to cause yet more casualties. So I think the main aim of the emergency services at the moment is to get as many people as possible away from those buildings.
Any word from the local hospitals, Greg?
Not yet. I think that they will just be sort of completely overburdened with the immediate injuries. I think one of the greatest difficulties is getting people through the traffic and through the streets and to those emergency services as quickly as possible. I think you can probably see the huge crowds of people in that area, which will only impede efforts to get the injured to hospital.
The picture in New York there. There's also been an attack in Washington. We've got reports that there's been a second attack at the Pentagon earlier. These pictures are from New York, I believe. We saw earlier that one of the towers of the World Trade Center had collapsed. There are considerable fears about whether the second tower will be able to stand up for much longer, and that is, of course, hampering the efforts of the rescue services. About 9 o'clock this morning, we saw 2 planes going straight into the World Trade Center, and you can see the picture there, smoke still billowing, the fires completely out of control. It's making the job of the rescue services extremely difficult. We've seen a few helicopters trying to get to the scene, but visibility must be extremely difficult for them. Jim Fish is with me here. Jim, we're not getting very much information at the moment as to injuries, as to the number of people that may have been caught up in this terrible, terrible accident, in this terrible incident.
It's difficult enough for the emergency services to actually gain access to the sites of these terrible events. Particularly in New York, the pictures we're looking at, you can see now the thick pall of smoke that's enveloping the scene. One of the other problems there, of course, is that these fumes will be extremely toxic. That'll mean that only people with proper breathing apparatus will be able to get anywhere near the rescue work. I think that's probably going to be restricting work as well.
We've got an eyewitness here telling us about the scene there at the World Trade Center in New York.
Complete mayhem, but everybody, few people took charge and they kept calm and kept moving people down. So thank God. Halwani Tariq.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
A warning to the US, that eyewitness said. You can see people looking up to the skies in disbelief in the United States, in New York. The World Trade Center there almost entirely obliterated by smoke. Only one tower is still standing. The other has been brought down by an astonishing suicide bomb attack. Twin suicide missions by 2 planes, one of which at least appears to have been a hijacked United Airways 737. You can see the skyline over New York is just a mass of cloud. A lone helicopter trying to find its way in It happened at one of the busiest times, in the 9 o'clock morning rush hour, and it's still not apparent who attacked, who is responsible for this scene of carnage. Over in Washington, there were scenes at the Pentagon, similar scenes, smoke billowing out because the Pentagon, the US Defense Headquarters, was also under attack. One, possibly two plane attacks. The BBC's Stephen Speech is there. Does it look as if there have been two attacks on the Pentagon, Stephen?
So far, I think we're talking about one. Now, that may change, but at the moment, it seems to have been just the one aircraft. I mean, I'm saying just one aircraft. I mean, it is an extraordinary event for an aircraft to crash, it seems, next to the Pentagon. It appears the building itself was not hit. The reports we're getting is that there was a huge explosion which threw people off their feet inside the Pentagon. That's according to US officials and eyewitnesses. And they're talking about an airliner, so we're talking about a large vehicle, a large plane crashing near the Pentagon, it seems just by a helicopter launch pad. And the one reporter who happened to be inside the building at the time, she's been quoted as saying that she was thrown to the ground by the force of the blast.
Just coming up now.
There are the press agents and everybody else that went the other way as everybody else went this way.
When you saw this collapse taking place, could you see if there were a lot of people on the ground near the building as it was happening?
No, I was further north than you were, but I was dead looking at 6th Avenue, the view you see of both towers as you come down 6th Avenue.
Right.
So, and most of this fallout stops about there.
An eyewitness to the World Trade Center attack, an extremely audacious terrorist attack against the World Trade Centers in New York. Jim Fish, the BBC's Jim Fish, has the latest information.
We are now getting more information about what may have happened, may have led up to these incidents, these attacks. General Richard Myers, who's the Vice Chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, has been reported by one of the news agencies, Associated Press, as saying that one hijacked plane was known about by officials heading from the New York area to Washington. Of course, they wouldn't have had time if that was the aircraft that hit close to the Pentagon. They obviously didn't have time to give out an alert. The other two aircraft, it's possible we have one unnamed US official saying that one was hijacked after takeoff from Boston, and a third was hijacked from Newark, New Jersey.
Let's just listen to what this eyewitness in New York is saying.
And we looked out at it, all of a sudden, boom, it seemed like it wasn't even real. And we came running over here closer to the place, and all of a sudden we saw the other explosion. I don't know. You know, that's all I saw. I saw a couple of people jumping out of the other building. I've seen 2 or 3 people jump out of the building. The first one, I don't know if that's number 1 tower, number 2 tower. It's unreal.
Panic on the streets of New York. There are people running away from the vicinity of the World Trade Center, where earlier 2 planes slammed into the sides of the twin towers of the World Trade Center. They're clearly being sent as far away as possible. Scenes of fear and pandemonium in New York. As you can see, the twin towers, one is already down, the other is billowing with smoke, the fire still out of control. That people should be as close as this is perhaps rather worrying. It happened in the middle of the 9 o'clock rush hour, and you can see that the police are trying to clear the streets and get people as far away from the building as possible. Perhaps they're worried that the second twin tower might collapse. We saw the first come down with a terrible bang. You can see the fire still raging. Let's just hear what this man has to say.
I was in B tower. A tower.
What floor were you on?
B1.
What floor?
First one.
What happened? Tell me.
When a big explosion happened, some guy came out, his skin was all off. I helped him out. This is him all over. There's people jumping out of windows. I've seen at least 14 people jumping out of windows. It's horrific. I can't believe this is happening.
Anything else that you saw? Were you there for the second hit by the plane?
About 10 minutes later, the second building went off.
Did you see it?
Yes, I saw it. It just blew up. A big explosion. People started running. It was just chaos everywhere.